Hello everyone, my name is Jay. I'm one of the expert OET teachers here at E2 Language. In this live class, we're going to look at Listening Part C, which I think is probably the most challenging subtest of all of them. What I want to do in this live class is describe to you what this subtest is about. I'm going to show you the test paper and you're going to hear the lecture. What you're going to see and hear is actually an official sample from the OET website, and I've been given permission to use that sample for this teaching purpose. We're going to do some real practice on that sample, and then lastly I'll show you the answers at the end. And in the meantime, I'm going to talk to you about a method, the best way to approach this subtest in your exam to achieve the highest score possible. So first of all, let me describe this subtest to you. What I will do now is I'm going to play the instructions, and this is what you will see and hear on test day. So you might want to familiarize yourself with this part.
Part C. In this part of the test, you'll hear two different extracts. In each extract, you'll hear health professionals talking about aspects of their work. For questions 31 to 42, choose the answer A, B, or C, which fits best according to what you hear. Complete your answers as you listen.
Okay, so in short, what's going to happen is you're going to hear a lecture or an interview. And as you listen, you're going to have a series of multiple choice questions that you need to work your way through. After the first one's finished, you'll then listen to another lecture or interview and work your way through multiple choice questions as well. Okay, let's have a look at the multiple choice question, because this is what the question will look like in front of you on the page. You can see that there's a lot of text there. And so we're going to have to approach this strategically, because we're going to have to read and listen at the same time in order to answer this question successfully. Okay, so there are two types of questions that you'll see. You've got the direct question like this one here, which is a full sentence with a question mark on the end. It says, what does Sandra Morton see as the main aim in her work? This is easier than the second type of question, which is the incomplete sentence style question. When Harry was offered a routine health check at his local surgery, he initially what? This one's harder to keep in your mind, but nevertheless, we can still do it. And now let's talk about a method for how to answer these successfully. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is how to follow the talk, how to match keywords in the questions and the audio, because what you're going to see on test day is this, okay? You're going to see all of the multiple choice questions from 31, for example, down to 36. And the challenge here is that the audio doesn't tell you when you move from 32 to 33 to 34, etc. You have to know when to move from this question to this question. It's pretty tough. This is one of the key things that you need to work out how to do. You need to know when you've moved from 34 to 35 to 36, for example. So then you can actually focus on what to listen for. So this is the first step. Let me give you a little quiz on how to follow the talk, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you 3 question prompts here. You can see 31, 32, and 33. I'm going to play a little bit of audio, and I want you to tell me which question the audio relates to. Number 31, 32, or 33.
So, let me tell you a bit more about my patient Harry. Like many middle-aged men, Harry was offered a routine health check at his local doctor's surgery.
Okay. What about these ones? These ones, rather. Which question does this audio relate to? 34, 35, or 36?
For me, these factors really underline the importance of the community follow-up clinics we have in my area.
I'm not actually going to tell you the answer because we're going to do these questions in a second, but what I want to show you here is how the audio relates to that question prompt so you know where you're at. For example, in question 31, the first question says, what does Sandra Morton see as the main aim in her work? That's the question. Now, in the audio, she says, clearly, my job covers many aspects of patient care, but what's the priority? Main aim in her work, my job, priority. You know you're on question 31. Let's look at 32. When Harry was offered a routine health check at his local surgery, he initially what? So let me tell you a little bit more about my patient Harry. Like many middle-aged men, Harry was offered a routine health check at his local doctor's surgery. You can see how the same language is used in the question prompt as the first few lines of the audio. 33. During Harry's investigations for prostate cancer at a hospital clinic, he what? Harry's trip to the clinic started with a routine blood test. So there's some sort of relationship between investigations and the type of test here. You can go through, you can pause this video if you like, and you can see how the audio relates to the question prompt so you know how to follow your way through the questions. Okay, now we get to the heart of the method. And this is where it starts to get tricky, because what you need to do on test day is read and listen and read and listen and read and listen and read and listen. I talked to you about Listening Part B, which is a very different test where you can actually just ignore the question, the answer options rather, and purely listen and not read, then find the answer. With Listening Part C, you can't just ignore what's on the page in front of you. What you have to do is listen and read and listen and read and listen and read and listen and read, and you have to do this really quickly, and it's really hard because you can't listen and read at the same time. You can't get the information from the audio and the information from the text into your brain at once. What's going to happen is you're going to listen and this will block out. Then you're going to read and this will block out. And you're going to go back and forth like this. And you have to do it very quickly because you're going to be reading the question prompt, matching it to the audio, listening to the audio, reading the answer options like this. This requires practice. There's just no other way to do this. And yeah, even when I was doing this, I was going like, whoa, it was kind of tough. Anyway, let's do some practice. I'm going to give you a proper subtest now. And I want you to think about how you're doing this. We're going to reflect upon our strategies. And then at the end, we'll go through the answers and I'll show you the transcript so you can be really clear about what you heard. But right now, we're going to do some proper practice. Importantly, the practice that we're about to do will be simpler than the real test because what I've done is I've matched the audio to the question. Remember, on test day, you have to know when to move from one question to the next. I've made it easy for you. I've put it all onto the one page. Nevertheless, this will be good practice. Here we go.
Extract 1, questions 31 to 36. You hear a presentation by a specialist cancer nurse called Sandra Morton, who's talking about her work with prostate cancer patients, including a man called Harry. You now have 90 seconds to read questions 31 to 36.
My name's Sandra Morton, and I'm a specialist cancer nurse, helping cancer patients deal with their diagnosis and treatment. I'd like to tell you about the type of work I do, and particularly about one of my patients, recently diagnosed with prostate cancer. Let's call him Harry, to illustrate the sort of things I get involved with. Now, before we get on to Harry, I'll give you a bit of background. Clearly, my job covers many aspects of patient care, but what's the priority? Firstly, prostate cancer is in fact the most common cancer in men in the UK, with over 40,000 new cases diagnosed every year. That's a staggering number. One problem is that this type of cancer actually develops very slowly, so there may be absolutely no sign that you have it for years. So if we're going to reduce the number of cases, it's vital that people like me get the word out to as many men as possible, that we tell them how to spot the signs of prostate cancer, like an increased need to urinate or straining while urinating. Unfortunately, the cancer can be at an advanced stage by the time patients come in for tests, at which point the available treatments are far less effective. So, let me tell you a bit more about my patient Harry. Like many middle-aged men, Harry was offered a routine health check at his local doctor's surgery. As far as he was concerned, he had no particular health problems or obvious symptoms at the time, and so he almost ignored the invitation. But he'd promised his family he'd look after himself. His wife had died of ovarian cancer some years before, so he felt obliged to go. It was during his appointment that, based on a few symptoms he mentioned, Harry's doctor decided that he'd need further investigation for prostate cancer and referred him to a specialist clinic at the hospital. Harry's trip to the clinic started with a routine blood test, which initially showed a slightly low hemoglobin level. A further test then revealed that his PSA, the prostate-specific antigen, was high at 20. He then saw a urology consultant who conducted a digital rectal examination and biopsy. A procedure that I always try to explain to patients may be uncomfortable, but is entirely necessary. In fact, though, Harry said the 3-week interval between having a biopsy taken and hearing the outcome was far more of an ordeal. Harry told me that when he went to see the consultant to get his results, he immediately sensed he was in trouble. Although the consultant was very considerate in delivering the news, unfortunately the indications were that Harry did indeed have prostate cancer. He was assured that the cancer was low-grade and not aggressive. Harry had suspected the worst, and though he'd tried to prepare himself for it by doing some online research, finally hearing that confirmation was still a shock. In fact, the very mention of the word sent Harry into panic, which was very unlike him. So at the time I first met him, he was very vulnerable and grateful to have someone to talk to. Of course, the response to the illness amongst prostate cancer patients like Harry can vary enormously. I've dealt with some men, for example, who haven't really realised the importance of keeping up their medication because they've felt relatively well, especially if they've been experiencing unwanted side effects. Unfortunately, though, any break gives the disease the perfect opportunity to spread into the bones, making it much more difficult to treat and a successful outcome less likely. And some treatments do cause some unfortunate effects, such as erectile dysfunction, which some men really feel uncomfortable discussing, because it's a sensitive issue. Other patients have mentioned that even though they've been given a lot of help, it's still difficult to weigh up the pros and cons of the various treatment options they're offered, from ultrasound or radiotherapy right through to radical prostatectomy. So responses like these need to be taken into account by specialist nurses when talking to patients. For me, these factors really underline the importance of the community follow-up clinics we have in my area, which address many of these issues in the provision of healthcare for cancer patients. Staff at these clinics see patients during their recovery and only send them back to hospital for treatment if they develop significant new symptoms. Seeing patients in the clinics means that staff get to know each patient and build a relationship with them, which enables nurses like me to dispense advice and answer questions. And although we have no firm evidence, staff feel that's far more beneficial to patients than attending a large hospital clinic. So we're hoping more clinics like these can become available.
How did you go with that? If you were anything like me when I did this, it was a lot of listening, quickly reading, listening, quickly reading, listening, quickly reading, back and forth like this, bop, 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 eliminating incorrect ones or ones that weren't mentioned. And really, with all of mine, I got them all right, but I wasn't 100% sure with them. I really wasn't, you know. I wasn't like B, definitely C, definitely. I wasn't like that at all. I was like, I think it's B, but it turned out my intuitions were correct. And what happened to me when I was doing this was I got a bit of an insight into the method here. And one of the things that you need to be able to do is eliminate incorrect answers, which is really critical. The second thing that you need to be aware of with this method is it's using different language in the audio and different language on the paper here. So you have to be aware of synonyms. So let's reflect upon our how we did this. Okay, let's reflect upon this and think about it. Yes. So let's talk about how to eliminate distractors and how to use your understanding of synonyms. What I want you to do is, on the left-hand side is the question, the same question you saw before. On the right-hand side is the text or the transcript. I'm going to give you 60 seconds to try and answer this question by reading it, okay? Let's see how you go. And I want you to think about synonyms. I'll show you what I mean in a second. Okay, how did you go answering this question from reading the text? Let's talk about distractors. The distractors are in red. They're the ones that were mentioned, but they were incorrect, or they said something contradictory or wrong. The blue answer is the correct answer here. Let's read the blue answer first. So what does Sandra Morton see as the main aim in her work? Well, the main aim, according to her, is to raise awareness of the symptoms of the illness. It says in the text there or in the audio, it's vital that people like me get the word out to as many men as possible. In other words, raise awareness, to get the word out to as many men as possible, that we tell them how to spot the signs of prostate cancer. Raise awareness of the symptoms of the illness, like an increased need to urinate or straining while urinating. They are the actual symptoms there. Now have a look at the red text here. A says to inform patients about the different treatments, and B says to publicize the availability of tests. It says, unfortunately, the cancer can be at an advanced stage by the time patients come in for tests, at which point the available treatments are far less effective. So what's going on there is they are using keywords from those other two answer options, but they're wrong, okay? So C was correct, the other ones were mentioned, but they were contradictory or just not right there. They weren't the right answer. Let's continue with this. I'm going to give you 60 seconds to try to answer question 32. Okay, could you see the answer in there? Like the blue one that I showed you before? And could you see the distractors? Let's have a look here. So 32, when Harry was offered a routine health check at his local surgery, he initially felt that he was too fit and well to be in need of it. What it says here in the text is, Harry was offered a routine health check at his local doctor's surgery. As far as he was concerned, he had no particular health problems or obvious symptoms at the time, and so he almost ignored the invitation. So he felt that he was too fit and tired and well to be, too fit and well to be in need of it. There is the synonymous language there, right? Now, let's have a look at the distractors, A and C. A says, resisted the idea due to his wife's experience. His wife had died of ovarian cancer some years before, so he felt obliged to go. Well, that's very different to resisted the idea. He felt obliged. And C, he initially only agreed to attend because his doctor advised him to. Harry's doctor decided that he'd need further investigation for prostate cancer and referred him to a specialist clinic. He didn't advise him there at all. So again, you can see that some are mentioned, but they are not right. Only one is right, and it uses synonymous language. Let's do the number 33. This is good practice. Keep going. Okay, what's going on here? The answer is B. During Harry's investigations for prostate cancer at a hospital clinic, he found it hard to cope with the wait for some results. It says there, Harry said the 3-week interval between having a biopsy taken and hearing the outcome was far more of an ordeal. In other words, he found it hard to cope. It was an ordeal. Wait for some results. Hearing the outcome. You can see how the synonyms are used there. Now, A and C are mentioned. For example, he felt part of the examination procedure was unpleasant. It says a digital 9 rectal examination and biopsy, a procedure that I always try to explain to patients may be uncomfortable, but it's entirely necessary. Well, it doesn't say Harry mentioned anything about that. And C, Harry was given false hope by a preliminary blood test. It said he had a preliminary blood test, but it didn't say anything about hope. Let's try to do number 34. Okay, so what was Harry's response to being diagnosed with prostate cancer? The answer is A. He found himself reacting in a way he hadn't anticipated. The synonymous language that relates to this is this part here. Harry had suspected the worst and thought he'd tried to prepare himself for it by doing some online research. Finally, hearing that confirmation was still a shock. In fact, the very mention of the word sent Harry into panic, which is very unlike him. I should also mention that there's a distractor here. He immediately researched treatment options online. It said he did some online research, but it doesn't mention this. And also B, he was unconvinced by the prognosis he was given. He was assured that the cancer was low grade and not aggressive. So it mentions these two, but they are not right. Only A is right. Let's try 35. Second last one. Keep it up. Okay, let's have a look here. The answer is C. What typical patient response to the illness does Sandra mention? She mentions a reluctance to talk about the embarrassing aspects of treatment. It says there in the lecture, she said, and some treatments do cause some unfortunate effects, such as erectile dysfunction, which some men really feel uncomfortable discussing because it's a sensitive issue. Okay, look at A. Does she mention an unwillingness to commence appropriate medication? Well, it says right at the top there, I've dealt with some men, for example, who haven't really realized the importance of keeping up their medication, which is very different to commencing medication. And B, does she mention a failure to seek advice regarding different treatment options? It says, other patients have mentioned that even though they've been given a lot of help, it's still difficult to weigh up the pros and cons of the various treatment options they're offered, not a failure to seek advice. So you can see how you might or may be distracted by A or B, but in fact the answer is C. Last one, let's do this one and get it right. Okay, number 36. So, Sandra believes that community follow-up clinics are important because they offer patients more personal aftercare. Seeing patients in the clinics means staff get to know each patient and build a relationship with them. In other words, it offers patients more personal aftercare. Cool. All right. Okay, how did you go with that? You probably found it pretty challenging, right? Especially the listening part. Remember, you do not get to read the transcript. I put that there to make it easier for you so you could see what was happening in the transcript in that lecture. I want to know how you did, so please put your score into the comments below from when we did the listening part of it, not the reading part. What score did you get out of 6? It'll be interesting for your classmates to see your score, to see how different people do with this. Also, before you move on, I want you to click the subscribe button so whenever we release a new video about OET and OET 2.0, you'll be alerted and you can watch that and you'll be the first people to know about it. Also, feel free to click the thumbs up like button on this video. Okay, so we probably need to talk about how you can do some more practice on this subtest and with this skill. I want you to check out e2language.com. We are an OET premium preparation provider. We now have lots of practice tests for you, as well as skill building. If you need help with writing or speaking or any other subtest, we can help you out with that. So do check out e2language.com. You can sign up for free, and if you want, you can upgrade your account to take one-on-one tutorials, get writing feedback, join in the live group classes, etc. There's lots to do at e2language.com. Anyway, hope that was helpful. Thanks very much for watching. Keep practicing listening part C because it's a real challenge, but it is possible.